Thanks so much for joining us today for this e-learning opportunity, and thanks to all of our presenters for all the work they've put into these. A lot of these classes are about 22 hours long at summer seminar, and they've broken down to about 2 hours. It's a lot of work. So we really appreciate the time that they put into this. If you come up with questions during this presentation, feel free to either use the chat or the Q&A features here in Zoom. They'll come to me and I will share them with Ricardo either while we're going through the presentation or at the end. If we get too many, we'll wait to do the rest of them at the end, but we'll try and put some in while we're going through them. And at the end, I'm going to put out a survey through Zoom here using the poll feature. So please stay on to take that survey. It's only 10 questions. They're all multiple choice, very, very easy. It just helps us to improve these for the future and let the instructors know what they can work on. So I want to turn it over to Ricardo now. He's going to teach on Mexican voices in metal and paper. Enjoy.
Hello, amigos. Thank you very much for being here. We're going to start. And the first thing that I wanted to tell you is that I lied to you. First of all, we're going to start a little before 15:36. And I want to make sure that you realize that my English is not the best. And if at some point I might sound harsh, is due to the fact that I'm translating from Spanish into English in my head. I speak a language and a half, and unfortunately, we're stuck with half of it. So we're going to do the best that we can with whatever we have, which is me. I appreciate you being kind enough to being here today. So welcome. How did everything start? Well, if you're going to start in English, you're going to start with probably the Mayflower in 1620. But for us, it starts a little before. It starts with Queen Isabella and King Ferdinand in 1492. Yes, these are their faces. Completely different from whatever you expect from all the nice paintings of the 1890s. They were the founders of whatever we know as Spain. It doesn't include Portugal, of course. And if you see this, you will see that the line on the right, or the portion of the country on the right side belongs to Ferdinand, and the majority of Spain belonged to Isabella. So by merging these two lines of lineage, it became a very important part of Europe. The last territory that was invaded by the Moors happened to be the south side in Granada. One of the things that people don't understand or don't know about coins, especially of Spanish heritage, is that one side was devoted for the queen and the other side for the king. So in this case, you see this coin from 1490s, minted in Spain, and you can see that one side that has an F for Ferdinand, and another one had some sort of a V, but it is in reality a Y that is split in half, and it's for Isabel. Isabel wrote her name with a Y. So in 1492, they finally kicked out the Moors, and in Granada became the symbol of resistance, such as Philadelphia for the United States. And that's why they included the pomegranate in their coat of arms, as we're going to see later. This is another coin on which you can see Castile and Leon in a coin minted in Cuenca in Spain around that time. This is the kind of models that we're going to be using to start, our own coins in Mexico. These are the images of a $1 coin minted in in Seville, around this time of 1492. And you can see clearly a big pomegranate on the side of the shield right below it. That was so important that they put in the big coat of arms of Spain, Granada. On the obverse, or this shield is, of course, the side of the king, because he's the authority that is issuing these coins. On the other side, you would see the Gordian knot tying the arrows and the yoke, and that is on the side of Isabella, which is the queen. We will go into more detail in class if you are able to join us any of these summers whenever all of this happens to be gone. Isabella and Ferdinand in 1497 decided to establish what was going to be a coin, because as you saw, they had different kind of coins. And in 1497, the word real appeared as the unit of silver. The word escudo appeared as a unit for gold. And the word maravedí appeared for the unit in copper. This is the legal body that we will have for us to make coins in Mexico in years to come. Nope, Isabella and Ferdinand never heard of the word Mexico. That happened to be years later after their deaths. Okay, it was a conquest in Mexico, and in this conquest, you have a full city packed with bodies. And what Cortés decided to do was to leave the city and allow the nature to take its course. And in this way, they didn't have to move a muscle, and within a couple of years, they would allow for the whole thing to rotten and be clean at the same time for people to be able to go back and inhabit that place. Cortés was in a nearby town, and from there, he made some incursions to the dead city to get some goods out of it. They stayed out of Mexico City, or Mexico Tenochtitlan, as it was called in pre-Hispanic times, until 1524. That's when they come back in the middle of that year and establish the city council. Okay, so let's move on fast forward. And in 1535, in May the 11th, Charles V acknowledges that it was a need for a mint in Mexico, and the first mint of the New World is established thanks to this guy. However, believe it or not, this guy did not sign the official papers to establish the mint. He designated everything and everybody to happen, who was going to be the Viceroy of New Spain, who was going to be the mint's director and all of that, but he did not sign the establishment of the mint. Why? We will go there in a minute. This is a coin that portrays Charles V of the Holy Roman Empire, or Charles I of Spain. Interesting enough, Charles or any other of the kings would appear in silver in Mexico until 1772. So who signed the decree that was going to establish the Mexico City Mint? Well, if you open any book, it will tell you that it was Joan the Mad, the mother of Charles V. Joan had lost her mind for one reason or another, and we will go into those details and all the political innuendos in class. In here, we're just flying by. So the papers that you will see are copies or transcripts of the originals. And we don't know whose signature appeared on the original papers, because the original papers are either lost in Mexico City or in Seville, in the Indian archives or general archives in Spain. So whose queen was it? More than likely, it was not other than the wife of Charles V, this beautiful woman. This lady was Isabel of Portugal, and she was in charge of all the affairs when this happened, because her husband was in Africa trying to stop the reconquest that the Moors were planning of Spain. They wanted to go back and take whatever was their former vicereign of Spain, or humillar, as it was called in those days. If you keep on reading any of the books trying to quote the establishment of the mint in Mexico City, you will read this, and this is absolutely a lie. How can it be true if in 1535 the only thing that they could have known was Mexico City? Santa Fe in Potosí, Bolivia, happened to be discovered, much less conquered, 30 years later. So whenever you see this, is because it's a transcript made on the 1560s or 70s, on which these places already were going to have a mint according to the king. But the original decree had to say just Mexico City. And it says right there, you are able to make coins of vellon billion, which is copper with a tiny bit of silver, just so minute to call it not copper. However, you are not going to be able to make any gold. They made this disposition for the purpose of control. They said, if they steal from me some silver, I don't mind because I have a lot coming in. But gold is more important and more valuable than silver. So in 1535, the decree was extremely specific. How many coins you were going to get out of a specific amount of silver and how many denominations you were going to mint, which was the amount that you were going to mint of one denomination over the other, and on and on and on. No, it was not exactly in pesos, what they were saying, but rather in percentages. You know, a third of this is going to be done in 1 real, 2/3 are going to do in this and that and the other. We will go over this in class because, as I told you, we're just flying by. So one of the most important designs that you will see in here are the 2 pillars. Where did they come from? The first time that the pillars were used in any place in the New World happened in 1519 in Castilla del Oro, or Golden Castile, which is now Panama. They made this kind of seal and it said plus ultra. If you know the series that we're talking about, you realize that it has 2 letters that are off, which is the O and the E. The right legend should be plus ultra, and this is exactly what we're talking about. And this is how it became after 1525 in places like Mexico or New Spain. Actually, it was the Kingdom of Indies. Whenever they refer to Indies, they refer to us. We were the first Kingdom of Indies. And here you will see that this design is pretty similar to the dobla, which is a gold coin that circulated in Spain. So these 2 columns represented something interesting. What did they represent? These 2 columns represented the Stretch of Gibraltar, because it said that in those days in maps, it said ne plus ultra, which means there's nothing beyond, nothing further beyond. After that, the sea monsters are going to eat you. But the coins were going to bear plus ultra, which in my opinion is the most powerful legend ever coming from the New World. And the next one, following this one, would be freedom or liberty. This is one of the engravings that I found showing where it says it was nothing beyond these 2 columns. And it was very specific, as I told you, this decree. They say that it has to bear the M for Mexico, just the M. And we already talked about the 2 columns, so we already talked about 2 of the designs that should be bearing in the coins. They had the punches made in Spain, but the dies were engraved in Mexico. And these are more or less what the punches look like. What could you do with this? Let's see. With a little bit of creativity, you're able to start making something if you apply your creativity to it. This is how exactly the engraving happened. These are the images of one of the coins of 2 reales. We know the denomination because of the 2 dots that you see on top of the legend in between the columns. On the bottom, you will see the R for Francisco del Rincón, who was the first Asire. On the left image, you're going to see the 2 M's escorting the shield, the coat of arms of Spain. However, these 2 M's stand for Mexico, obviously. But look at the shield, the coat of arms. It has just the 2 lions and the 2 castles for Isabella. Why is that? What happened to all the Habsburg kingdoms like Aragon and Sicily and all of that? Well, remember that Christopher Columbus's trip was paid by the Queen. The king didn't want to put a single penny, but the Queen paid the whole thing. So because it was paid by her, it was her kingdom. And the laws that were going to rule in the New World were going to be of Castile, not of Aragon. This is another coin of 4 reales, made more or less at this time. And you can see the same design except for the denomination, which is in a numeral in Arabic terms. Okay, so how did the mint was going to work? This is very simple. First, we're going to X-ray this mint. The ores were going to come to the mint. They were already grounded and they were already treated and cleaned, washed. Then they were going to be melted into the ores that were going to make the coins at the end. Then in this fancy, colorful drawing, they made these kind of molds, which in reality were probably stones with holes, and they made something there. And then the guys that really made the real deal were these hammering guys that were making a big planchet. Then somebody that was called the coin cutter would cut the flans for the coins. Then they would go all the way up to this drawing to the judge of the scale, as it was called in those days, which was nothing else but the one that filed the flans to make sure that they were of proper weight. And at the end, they would be struck. That's how a mint would work in those days. The viceroy of Mendoza, which was the first one that opened the mint, knew that they had to do something with their coins because they were not quite right according to the description. They forgot to put waves of C's within the column, between the columns. He put, or the engraver put the Asayer letter between the columns, are for Francisco del Rincón. So he had to go back to the drawing board. In June the 28th of 1542, he decided to go back and do a new design. And it was a very much refined design compared to the first one. That's why we call the early series and the late series. And you can tell them apart because of the waves that you can see between the columns. This is a sample of 1 real. And you can see that basically stays the same, except that on the side of the shield, in one side you see the M for Mexico, and the other side a letter for the Asayer, in this case an L. We're going to go over every single one of the Asayers of the mint. In 1542, the Viceroy of Mendoza decided to make copper coins, and he made these coins, but the Indians who were going to be the persons who were going to receive these coins refused to take these coins. And they said copper was the ugliest of metals and we don't like them. On one side, you see the K for the king, Carolus or Charles. On the other side, the I for Johanna or the queen. These coins were thrown to the lake of Texcoco, which was the lake that surrounded then Mexico City. The Indians said, we refuse to take these coins. They were punished, physically to stop these practices, but they didn't. That's why whenever we find the copper coins, we find them with the corrosion. That is the reason why. The Viceroy Mendoza did something that nobody else had done before. He was going to change numismatics in the New World for all of us. He decided to add an extra letter. Some authors said that it was because the Mexican design and the Spanish design, especially of the Mint of Madrid, were too alike that they wanted to differentiate them. That is absolute nonsense. Madrid Mint closed in the 1470s, and it didn't open until the 17th century, in the 1610s. So at this very moment, it was no Madrid Mint. Why did he add this letter? Because he wanted to add it. There's no more to it. This MO started in 1542, and is exactly the mint mark that you see here on the coin minted last year. This is the oldest mint mark that you will see. By 1570, they made a new design. Charles had died, and his son, Philip II, had inherited the Habsburg kingdoms of his grandfather and Castile and Leon from his grandmother. So by now he was the sole heir of the whole thing. So he wanted to make sure that he had a good coat of arms in his coins. In the books, it says that it started coinage in 1572. That's a lie. Last year, I was able to go to the Mexican archives. So eventually I will make an article about it, on which the new dispositions of the new shield arrived in 1571. I chose the ugliest shield so you can learn from the ugliest thing. Because if you learn from the ugliest thing, after this, you will be able to learn easy from the rest of the coins. Look how the coat of arms have changed. Now it has a lot of things. What does it have? It has Castile and Leon. It has Granada. It has Aragon. It has Sicily and Naples. It has Austria. It has New Burgundy. It has Old Burgundy. It has Brabant. It has Flanders, Tyrol, and that's it. So from now on, it's going to be a complete coat of arms, what you're going to see in coins.
Hey, Ricardo, a question's come in. Can we ask?
Yes.
Okay. Said, I thought the first silver coins from Mexico was the cob coins. Was it not?
It was not. It was Charles and Johanna. The cobs start later. You will see what is the difference. And before I go on, for that question, look at this coin. It's semi-round. They really took care to make these coins. That's why these are completely apart from the cobs. Some people classify these as cobs. It's absolutely wrong. This is the series of Charles and Johanna, which are not cobs. You will see what I'm talking about in a minute. Thanks for your question. In this 1571, something happened that was going to make sure that was going to put Mexican silver on top of the world, but we didn't know it then. The cross was completely different from all the crosses used in every part of the empire. It had circles at the end of the arms of the cross. These circles in every denomination would say that it was Mexican coin, a Mexican silver, not from anywhere else. These little circles were going to be key in a minute. Well, the rest of the design was not the best, but hey, they tried. And that is the coat of arms of Castile. So at some point, he got away with putting the coat of Castile in one side, and then the complete coat of arms on the other. The first 8 reales or peso was this one. As you can see here, this is we started in 1571. By then, in Bolivia, they were already been making the 8 reales. So that's why the silver in Potosí was more important and more famous than the one in Mexico. Look at the lions. They're usually standing up or rampant, as they're called, but there's a very rare design called the walking lions, and this is one of these specimens. And also, they made mistakes in the design. Usually, I would ask you what is the mistake, and I would leave you for a minute or two to think about it until somebody would say that the lions and the castles are transposed. And these are extremely difficult errors in 8 reales. Of course, there are other kind of errors that are more obvious, like this one, on which the coin was struck twice. And you can see that the cross became like a Union Jack, a symbol of the British flag. In 1620, when the Mayflower came, all the coins, all the silver that it was all over the world, prior to the 1500s, thanks to the silver of Peru and Mexico, in the whole world, doubled. As you may imagine, it became a huge inflation all over the world, and the disruption of the value of silver and gold happened. The gold from Colombia alleviated a little bit of this situation. Anyhow, these are cup coins. Look at them. They look completely different from each other. They're not round. They have very capricious forms. And these are true cobs. Kings were coming and going. Finally, Philip II died, and Philip III came up in 1621. And then he died, and then Philip IV took over. As you may assume, some of these kings were not as smart as other kings, just like in English lineage. The monograms of the half realis are precisely what gives us more or less the king. You can see this half real of Philip III, which is completely different from Philip IV with an inverted L. However, being half realis and all being named Philip, they could exchange these monograms easily without any hesitation. In class, we're going to address the Galanos, the handsome ones that are mistakenly called royal presentations. They are not royal and they're not presentations. They were special issues. No, you will not be handling any one of these because there's none at the American Numismatic Association, and as you may imagine, I do not own one in my collection. But most of these coins that you're going to see, you will handle in class.
Ricardo, another question's come in.
Sí.
It says, how rare are 3 real Charles and Johanna coins?
3 Realis coins in Carlos and Johanna are extremely rare because they were minted until March of 1537. On the provision of Monzon, they decided not to coin them anymore because they were confused with 2 Realis and 4 Realis. So they stopped making them, and they just lasted for several months in production. And they're extremely rare. The American Numismatic Association owes 2 specimens, and you will be able to handle one if you come to my class. Okay, and then here we go. Not everything was as nice as you imagine. As early as 1543 in Italy, they realized that coins coming from the New World were debased. People started to refuse them. Nobody cared. Until in Spain, they started to, make a wound in somebody's toe, and then the king himself was being, forfeited from his royal fief. So everybody was looking for the coins, for the crosses on the coins. Where did they come from? They're missing a lot of silver on each one of these coins. Where do they come from? They come from Potosí, Bolivia. It was the most famous silver up to that point. Mexico initially was it, but with all the amounts of silver that were coming from Potosí, they realized that Potosí coins were better than Mexican. But at this point, they debased their own coins. They started little by little until it was very obvious. So the king had to devaluate these coins. The 8 to 6, the 4 to 3, the 2 to 1, and the 1 to half. This is the mint of Potosí in Bolivia. Actually, the second one is not the first one. This was opened in 1773, but hey, I didn't find any other image of the mint in Potosí. But look at the crosses. They end up either flat or continuous. Mexican silver had a distinctive circle that would be able to distinguish good silver from bad silver. That's why Mexican silver became most demanded in all over the world. And that's why you find 10,000 different designs, designs in counterstamps and things like that. Out of all of these consequences of this fraud, the most important one was the loss of prestige. They made a complete different design in Peruvian coins to make sure that people that received the new coins would know that they came after the scandal. And whenever the crown took over the mint in 1650, and they put 3 dates on each coin. Whenever you see the 3 dates, it's a rare coin. usually they made these 3 dates to make sure that people knew that this coin came and it was of good silver. The old ugly coins that were debased had to be stamped. If you do not collect any Latin American coins and you have just a few of Mexico, try to get one of these because these are very good. All of these that have a counter stamp are the ones that were part of the scandal. These are a part of all the counter stamps that you may find on these coins. All the coins that are counter stamped have been debased, and they were circulating at 6 reales. We're going to talk about the origin of most of these, how these survived. If they were condemned to be melted, how did they survive? We will talk about that in class. The king had to do this. He had to make an official public decree on which all the Peruvian coins were going to be devalued. This was the biggest bruise that his ego could hold at the time. Look at the Mexican coins. They're very humble in design. They're very oddly shaped. They don't look as nice as the Peruvian ones, but everybody knew that they were of good silver. Look at the simplistic design. They didn't have to change the design in all the coins just because of one mint. They just changed the design on that mint. And that's what happened. This is a coin from 1651. And opposite of what you may think, the first feminist of America was born in Mexico in 1651. And you would say, but wait a minute, you're talking about America or Mexico being part of America? Oh, yes. And it is very important that you drill this into your head, because if you don't, you're going to get confused. America is a continent that comes all the way from Alaska and dies in Tierra de Fuego in Chile. And we were America until, you know, the United States started to take an identity of their own and calling themselves Americans. But we were Americans for at least 101 years old, you know, prior to the Americans, because Veracruz was founded in 1519. You will see why I'm making a big emphasis on this America term. This is the first feminist. We are very socialist, but we have 2 priests and a nun in our currency. So here we go. Philip IV was dead. And who came after him? His beautiful heir, his son, Charles II, the spooked king. Somebody had to pay for all the inbreeding that was going on in that Habsburg family, and it was Charles II. He couldn't procreate. He was unable physically to do so. He had epileptic attacks after 2 days of being on this earth. He had mood swings. He was mentally ill. And sometimes, at some point, he was lucid enough to realize that he was a king and that he had a lot of power. And his coins bore his monogram. And this monogram is very easily distinguishable because this is the only one that starts with a C. The other started with a P for Philip in Latin. This is how the monogram came to be. This is another coin of half real now of Charles II. And you can see barely a letter G right there, which is the Asire. This comes from Jerónimo Becerra. Actually, Jerónimo de Becerra. And this is, and you had 2 of the Asires. Manuel de León, as a coincidence, is the name of my grandfather. All of these we're going to go in depth in class. Charles II made a will, and he left everything to the nephew of Louis XIV. And he wanted to unite the 2 crowns into one. Immediately, Louis XIV named his his nephew, the heir of the throne of France. And the English, of course, threw a fit. They said, with the animosity of the French and the money of the New World, they're going to kill us, and we cannot allow that. So what they did, they started a war of succession. They started saying that, a Habsburg was the one that had to be in the run and not a Bourbon. And this is what happened. It was a war of succession. Some parts in Spain supported Charles III, and also some parts of Europe did the same thing. The other guy was Philip V. Europe got involved, of course, and these are the territories that supported one king or the other. At the end, England allowed Philip V to become a king of Spain as long as he resigned the French crown, as he did in 1711 in the Peace of Westphalia, the Treaties of Utrecht.
This guy was a completely different guy. It was a new ball game. It was a new family. He was the father of the Bourbon. And
Ricardo, something happened with your sound.
sorry,
Something happened with your sound.
what happened to my sound?
You're really muffled at the moment.
Oh, I'm sorry. Am I hearing that? Am I hearing
Okay,
better?
now that's better. You did something, now it's fine.
I'm sorry. It was probably the internet connection. Thank you for letting me know.
Yeah.
Okay, again, these are cobs. Look at them. They look completely different. They look different from each other. People would clip these coins and nobody would know what was going on. And in the disposition of 1728, this situation was going to put to a halt altogether. And it was because a Bourbon decided to make a change in the coins. This was going to stop many abuses, among them, the payment of the royal fee. This change was going to be very obvious. Coins would be round. Spain had the chance to do these round coins since the 1610s, but they didn't make them because they were too difficult to make, and they made them in very little quantity. In here, you see a cinquentin, or a 50 Realis coin, is 6 ounces of silver in one coin. We will talk about all of these whenever we're in class.
I'm sorry, Ricardo, one more time. Could you
Yes.
put it in a little bit closer to your mic? It's quiet all of a sudden.
Okay, now I'm dying. Okay, here we
I'm
go.
sorry.
That's okay. Thank you for letting me know.
Yeah.
They send the dice from Spain. And when they send the dice from Spain, the master dice had all these little gizmos, and now you know how they could put them together. And these new designs were going to put back the 2 pillars as they were in the times of Charles and Johanna, but they were going to have a refined touch of the 18th century. Again, the Hercules columns. And these coins were going to be of the 2 worlds. And these coins were going to be of the 2 worlds because they were made to become the dollar before the dollar. They were meant to circulate all over the world, and they did. These 2 worlds were the old and the new.
Do you want to take another question?
Yes, please.
Okay. When people clipped cobs, would they purposely clip around the cross to keep the dots to show good Mexican silver markings?
Yes, that would be my assumption and my guess. The fact or the concrete evidence say that it was at random. So, but my assumption is that they would leave those little circles for sure. Yes. Yes, because that was assurance that the coin came from Mexico. Okay, some authors and some people would say that from the right column, you could see it right there before your eyes. It was the sign of the dollar. The dollar sign came from the right column of the right pillar of that design. Yes, it's right there, plain as day. My response is that if you want to see the face of Jesus Christ in a French toast, you can interpret any evidence as you wish. Okay, how do they look like? How did the coins look like? These coins were round and they had a legend in Latin, utraque unum, which means together make one. You can see the MO on the side of the date twice. Oh, and this was the birth of the pillar dollar, called in English pillar dollar, which is absolutely wrong. We didn't spend any dollars. In Spanish, we call it columnario, which is columns for the columns. But in those days, it was perceived as the coinage of the worlds and seas. And that's the way it was called when they referred to these coins. And yes, you will be able to get one of these 1732 coins because the American Numismatic Association has one, thank God. The reverse was of much discussion because on the upper left, you will see a French coin, and there you will see the new franchised Spanish coat of arms. and they started arguing that now the French designs were going to be even in coins. Well, after all, they were the House of Bourbon. The legend would call up on the name of the king. Coins left Mexico and they went everywhere. We will talk about coins from the shipwrecks, and these coins appear left and right, and they have very interesting stories. Not all of them are the same, of course, because they don't come from the same place. This is a nice website to go and look for, sedgwickcoins.com. That is a very well-known auction house of these kind of rescued or salvaged coins. But in their website, you have all the information of every single wreckage that you can think of. And that's a good place to start if you like these kind of coins. These coins changed and they went to another design. They kept the pillars and the crown and the coat of arms. However, the design was going to change in the 1770s. This is the new design that these silver coins were going to have. It's impossible to have a 1772 pillar dollar in Mexico because this coinage started the very first day of that year. There is an error in the design that was fixed or corrected in the middle of 1773. The mint mark and the Assayer letters are upside down. Why did that happen? I'm not sure, but I'm going to find as soon as all of this happens, and I'm going to dig in the National Archives. It must be an explanation somewhere. And this is the first time that a Spanish king appears in silver. In gold appears in 1732. But look at the profile of this poor king with that big nose. And he was the very first one that appeared in a Mexican coin, or a coin in the New World, in silver. I said two worlds, and I was not joking. These coins were everywhere. They travel to China, and I'm going to start with that because that is the most common marking that you will find in a Mexican coin, and they're called chops. These chops are Asian characters, and they had one sole purpose: to be able to read that the coin is good, because they didn't have any idea or clue about the Latin alphabet. So what they did was to stamp in the coins, and this is what they actually could see and read in those coins. They didn't see or read anything else. In the reverse is the same thing. Now, what is the taste of chopped coins? Well, it depends on your taste. It's no more or less in the value. The more chops some people like it, the less chops the people like it more. It depends on the person. Remember, your collection fits your needs. Eventually, with time, they made these smaller chops, and these smaller chops are the ones that usually plague these issues that went to the Orient. In another place that I want to touch, and it is more than anything else, because you can relate to that, is in England. Mexican coins circulated in England, and of course, they were counter-stamped. We're going to go into the economic situation of the world whenever we discuss this in class. But it's suffice to say that these coins were counter-stamped from 1797 to 1803, even though some people say that it happened until the first 3 months of 1804. I'm not sure. I'm just quoting what I'm reading. I'm not an expert of this. Anyhow, so you can see that they put an oval counter-stamp and on the neck of the Spanish king. And it was a very infuriating and disrespectful verse going around on the newspapers and pamphlets at the time. And as you can see, they referred to Charles IV and George III, not Charles III and George III, because Charles IV was a very unique king. He was a very unique king. We're going to talk about him in class. We don't have time to discuss all of the innuendos that this gentleman had in his psyche. So because they started counterfeiting these oval counterstamp, they decided to make an octagonal one just for the end of 1803 and probably the beginning of 1804. And then they said, enough, we're going to overstrike the coin with our own designs. So this is the result of that counterstamping, overstriking or restriking of the coin. We are going to go over some of these details. And you can see that they were made in the Bolton and Watt steam presses, and they made a huge good job. But some little remnants here and there tell you what was the underlying coin. And in this case, you can see more or less some of this design. So in this one, you can see perfectly the date of 1804, and this is the underlying coin of 1807. Wait, what? How can you have an underlying design of 1807 and the overstriking of 1804? It doesn't make sense. It does, because they make this overstriking from 1804 all the way to 1810, but they didn't change the date. That's why you see this kind of oddities on which you can see the underlying design clearly saying 1807 and the overstriking saying 1804. Whenever we're in class, I'm not going to give it to you that easily. I'm a teacher.
Another questions come in.
Sí, señor.
Okay, could you please describe the edge of the pillar coin?
The pillar coin is a fleur-de-lis, one on top of the other, and that's the way it looks like. This fleur-de-lis, it's very important to determine whenever it's a modern counterfeit or an original coin. We will discuss all of that in class. Thank you for your question. Yes, the third side of the coin had a design and it was nothing but fleur-de-lis. Okay, so in here, you can see, even though it's a very good coin, I like this one and I got it because you can see some of the underlying design. But even if it's in very good shape and very well struck, you see some of the underlying design. And I like this one in particular because you can see the 1805 very clearly on the 5 under the D and 1804 on the side. This is a very unique coin in my opinion. I like it. However, this coin has something else that I was not aware until I started using my loop. Please use your loop in all your coins, even if you think that you know what you have. Because I found a counterstamp in one of these, a TW counterstamp, that my opinion is it could be one of the silversmiths of the time in London. Why would anybody countermark one of these coins? It's beyond me, because it's very well struck. It couldn't pass for any forgeries of the times or any doubt. I don't know. But I haven't seen anything like that or ever since in any of the coins that I have reviewed in the shows. The Bank of England had a sister bank, and they call it the Bank of England. The Ireland. They didn't use the Bank of England because they had a recent uprising and they didn't want to stir the pot. So they put these coins using the Mexican silver. And in here, you can see some of the remnants of the original coin. And on the other side, you even can see a partial date. You can see a 6 right there on the coin. Unfortunately, I have twisted my eyes to see the next digit and it just doesn't appear. So I don't know if it's 1796 or 1806, because in both of those cases, Charles IV was the king. So my assumption is that it could have a better probability to be 1806. Who knows? Okay, let's move on to the War of Independence. The War of Independence happened in 1810, and it happened in the center of Mexico, which was the heart of the mining province of Guanajuato. So because of that, they had to open new mints. Yes, from 1536 all the way to 1810, we just had one mint, and all the silver coming from all over the viceroy of New Spain came into Mexico City. These are the first 3 mints that were opened by the viceroy, and the viceroy said that any governor that wanted to open any more mints, he was more than welcome to do so. And the only one that did that was the Viceroy of Chihuahua. These are the mint marks, MVA for Monclova, ZC for Zacatecas, CA for Chihuahua. The only governor that opened another couple of mints was the governor of Chihuahua, Nemesio Salcedo, in Sombrerete and in Durango. These are the coins that you could see made out of these mints, emergency mints they were called. They're plain ugly. That's why the uglier they are, the more expensive they get, because most of them got to the melting pot. And because they got to the melting pot, you know, they're very scarce today. And you can see that on the third side of the coin, for the person that asked for them, you can see that they have the colonial design of a rectangle in a circle followed by each other. That's the one from Mexico City. People, of course, hated these colonial, coins from the independence times. We're going to go from each one of these mints, and we're going to see all the details of one from the other. The insurgency went and established themselves in Zitácuaro, which is on the province. It was on the province of Michoacán, and of course they needed money. Luckily for them, they had silver mines close by, and they had a screw printing press of some sort, and they start striking coins of smaller denomination. But the first one that they made was not actually struck. And the designs that they used for these new coins were of Indian design and of European design, because after all, it was a mix of those two cultures, the one that was going to create Mexico. So you can see the arrow and the quiver and the bow and the pike and sling. I think it's called the sling on the bottom, and then the cross for the Catholic Church. This is how it looks in the coins. Why was I making so much emphasis in America being a continent? For this purpose. I can assure you that George Washington, Adams, and Jefferson, and the rest of them didn't know how to pronounce Tlalpujahua, much less where it was. And yet again, in Mexico or New Spain, we're making coins on behalf of the Supreme Council of America. Wow. So America was not the United States? Of course not. The same way that in your currency, you didn't put the colonies, the American colonies. You call the government the continental government, because you talk about the whole continent. That's exactly what the word meant. So that's why it's so important that you realize what was the thought of the times to understand why the coins are named and called as they are. It's not a disrespectful or a way of rebellion of one thought over the other. With time, everybody knows the Americans are now people from the United States. But in those days, Americans were people from America, which was a continent, not a country. So this is the coat of arms of this Supreme Council of America. In this Supreme Council of America, you would see a bridge, which some people have tied with the bridge of Calderón, on which Hidalgo was defeated. I'm sorry, and then you have the cactus on which the eagle is perched. And of course, at the end, you have the crown, because believe it or not, these coins were made on behalf of Ferdinand VII. And you would say, what? It doesn't make sense. Yes, it does, because we were not trying to get independent completely from Spain, but rather to have representation just like you did with the English colonies. Even if it was minute, it was better than nothing. So this is the reverse. This is the first time that an eagle appears in a Mexican coin. We're going to go over all the denominations that were made and the differences in design. Okay, so when did the very first real Mexican coin was made? It was made in 1811. Morelos made these coins of copper, and he didn't have any silver, so he used copper because that's what he had. He put his name in a monogram on an overlapping of his initials, MOS for Morelos. You can see on this monogram, the M, the O, and the S. Then he started putting some design into that coin. Of course, the denomination, 8 Realis, and the date. But it looked too plain. What else can we have? Ah, he snapped his fingers. I know what we're going to put. Grapes. Why do you think he put grapes? Because he liked grapes a lot? Because he liked the wine that it came out of it? Because it was forbidden in the New World to cultivate grapes, or by that means olives, because no wine was going to compete with Spanish wine. That's why he put grapes as the first design of the Mexican coin. Why am I calling it the Mexican coin? You will see in a minute. In the reverse, these grapes and olives were just allowed to be cultivated by the priests. In this case, Hidalgo had a couple of those things. For the consecration wine and for the holy sacraments, they needed olive oil. The reverse, he put something interesting. He put on the reverse of the coins the word Sud, which means south, which was his region, acknowledged by Hidalgo to Morelos, and the bow. He didn't put anything else but the bow and an arrow, and the word south. Among the wings of Nike, victory. So there you go. That's the reverse. Why do I keep calling it the first Mexican coin? Because it doesn't say Ferdinand VII in any place, while the rest of them, at some point or another, said something referring to the king. Morelos hated the king of Spain. Texas. Let's talk about Texas, because if you open any Mexican catalogs, you will see that there's a Texan counterstamp. All the independence that I've been talking about happened in the south side of Mexico, central south. But very few people know that a parallel movement as rich as the one in the south happened in the north, in the province of Texas. Nobody studies it because for the Mexicans, it's now part of the United States. And for the Americans, it's part of Texas history, not ours. We didn't have those lands before. So Manuel Salcedo was the governor of Texas. And according to some authors, he put his initials, M for Manuel and S for Salcedo, becoming a monogram of MS. And some authors are daring enough to say that it was applied from March of 1810 to March of 1813. Absolutely wrong. This counterstamp, in my opinion, is a complete forgery, and it was made to deceive the American collectors in the 1850s or 60s. It was impossible for anybody to have counterstamped a coin from Mexico City because it was no need. The Mexican coins, from Mexico City, they came with a beautiful edge, extremely nicely done. Nobody would have a doubt of those coins. So there's no need to put a stamp in a coin of Mexico City.
Ricardo?
Hey.
Question came in. It says, are all silver Morelos stud coins fake? I know I screwed that one up.
I'm sorry?
Are all silver Morelos stud coins fake?
Yes, they are completely, all of them, absolutely all of them. How do I say this with such assurance? Number one, because I have read the original papers of the Times. Let me put an image, at least it's not going to be a blank screen. And in those papers, it says that all the coins that were made by Morelos and sent to the Supreme American Council in Michoacan, they were from cast coins. So he used cast coins, but they were cast. They were not struck, and they were obviously not with the design of Morelos. They had the design of a counterstamp, and that's what he used, and that's what we're going to talk about. They made very easily. I mean, these copper coins were forged left and right, and the difference to see a counterfeit coin from Morelos in an original striking of Morelos would be precisely of this coin, on which you can see that grapes are not there. So Morelos got infuriated, and he said, we're going to confiscate all of them, and we're going to make them again, and blah, blah, blah. And they said, sire, we have an idea. Why don't you use a stamp and you validate them? So If you open the catalog, you're going to see these 3 different counterstamps of Morelos. 2 of them are fake, in my opinion. Those 2. This is the original one. And this is how it looks like. You ask me if Morelos used silver. Yes, he does. Yes, he did. Morelos hated the king, but the American Supreme Council adored the king because they saw in the king somebody that could help them to affix the power to this body of government and representation. And very few people know that it was a war even in coins about these 2 ideas. You can see the Supreme Council's counterstamp and the Morelos counterstamp in the same coin. But if you pay close attention, the Supreme American Council is on top of the Morelos counterstamp. So it's like it needed an extra validation from Morelos to make sure that people knew who was in power. Morelos made sure that every single one of his counterstamp coins, his design came on the face of the king, just like this one. So these are the kind of coins that Morelos used in silver, never a sod coin. And we're going to go on the legal situation on why in class.
You want another question?
Sí, señorita.
Okay. Are these Morelos coins contemporary or modern fakes?
Good question. The copper coins are contemporary fakes, forgeries, and that's why he was able to counterstamp them. The silver sod coins are modern fakes, modern contemporary coins. They're from the 1960s and 70s. No, I take that back. Some of them date back as 1880s. Why? Because it was an American author that was making the first Morelos catalog in 1898, and he was looking for coins, and he went to Michoacan, and people, in my opinion, were making coins fake to make sure that they came into that catalog so they could validate their fake, their forgeries, and then they can pass them and sell them to the collectors, the American collectors. But no, it's impossible that a sod coin could be in silver because they were made as paper money. What would be the idea of making a gold paper money, you know, as an oxymoron, because it wouldn't be paper anymore. It would be a real coin, even if it's rectangular and thin. All these copper coins were in lieu of a real silver coin. If you make a silver coin, then it doesn't have to have this design. That's the reason why. It's legal. It's impossible to have a silver sod because of the law that Morelos passed. Anyhow, I put this little section for my American coin collectors that are very proud to have a Morgan dollar with a slanted R or a little moved N. Or, well, in Mexican coins, you're going to have a ton galore of differences like this RRX, Dre instead of day, Rix instead of Rex. And also you're going to see differences in the position of these dies that were made by hand. So that's why you see differences in position and in things like that. And we're going to go over this in more detail in class. You can even see a clash die on the last one. How much money did the Spaniards took from Mexico? This is in millions of pesos. I want to remind the audience that the first time that Philadelphia Mint, which was the most advanced mint in the United States, was not able to produce $1 million silver dollars until the Civil War. We were making millions of pesos since the 16th century. So this will tell you more or less how much money they took from just from Mexico. Imagine something similar to this from Peru, and something even bigger from Colombia with all the gold. And that is just the metals that were coined. Imagine all those silver bars and all the gold bars and all the emeralds and everything else. In my opinion, and with all due respect, it's a fact. There's no more mismanaged culture in the world than the Spaniards at these times. They had the three world treasuries, and look what they did with all that riches. Anyways, we declared independence, and we had an emperor, Agustin de Iturbide. This is a medal that shows the inauguration of Agustin de Iturbide as Emperor of Mexico. in July of 1822. It's a beautiful medal whenever you find it, especially if you are lucky enough to find it in good condition. And this is the guy. Everybody started pushing him to have a coin bearing his image, but he didn't. He had to wait for the legal frame to be depicted, and this is exactly what happened. His Royal Highness Agustin I, by the providence of God. He couldn't say by the grace of God because he didn't have any royal blood. This, number 6, is the one that is the most important for all of the American collectors. What? What does that have to do anything that happened in Mexico with us? You would say. And this is why. Number 6 said, no variation in fineness or weight would be happening in the new coinage of independent Mexico. And you would say, what does that have to do with us? This is the key of the whole thing. Philadelphia Mint opened in 1794. It started, 1793. It started striking coins in silver in 1794. Yes, they were modeled after the Spanish 8 Realis, but not necessarily, because it had to be debased in fineness of 900 to be able to pay all the cost of striking coins. And the Mexican coins were going to be 902.7 instead of 900. That is why the Mexican peso was worth more than $1 for several decades, because the American dollars had less content of silver and by end of weight.
You have another question, Ricardo?
See,
Were cobs meant to circulate, or were they meant to be used as bullion and shipped to Spain for reprocessing and striking as new coins?
I'm sorry?
Were cobs meant to circulate, or were they meant to be used as bullion and shipped to Spain for reprocessing and striking as new coins?
I'm sure that the Spaniards would try to save face, saying that they were not meant for circulation, but in reality they were. There's not a doubt. The cobs circulated all over the places for 300 years, actually 2.5. And then they were cast and melted to be recycled and to be made into the new circular coins. But they circulated because it was no other form of coins in many places in the world. And it was the one that was the most. So all of these dispositions will tell you that our first coins, we're going to have the image of Iturbide. Of course, when he saw this image, he hated it. He said, I look like a kid. And then when he saw the first coin, he said, what? That is the ugliest thing ever. It reminded me of the 1793 response of the American public when they saw the first 1793 cent in circulation. I remember reading, Miss Liberty looked like she's spooked or afraid of England, and that's why she looks like that. Well, in this case, our first peso looked like that, and he hated it. And wait until you see the reverse. They used the Mexican eagle, trying to make sure that everything was as Mexican as possible. Of course, the emperor was white, blonde, and green-eyed, but hey. What is it missing? What is this little chicken missing? And actually, we call this the chicken Iturbide because it looks like a chicken. It's missing the snake. And this is how it looks in coins. Yes, you will be able to handle all these coins. And also the gold one. I didn't include it because I didn't have time. I'm already half of the conversation, and I need to keep on moving. So they made new coins, and by then they had a more refined profile of Iturbide and also of the Mexican eagle. It followed the colonial style on which they put the name of the monarch on the obverse, and on the reverse they put who they were going. It was going to be emperor or king, and then the denomination, and at the end the 2 letters of Asires. This is the last style of Iturbide in 1823. And sometimes whenever you start looking a little, you can find extra little things. Okay, we kicked out Iturbide, we kicked out the Spaniards, now what? Well, we became a republic. How is the new coin going to look like? Well, before we go into that, we're going to go into our form of government. Everybody decided that a republic was better than any other form of government. And it was a centralist government, which was the closest to having a king, or a federalist government, which is exactly what the United States has. And we tried to copy you as much as we could because it worked. Your project of democracy worked. So why to fix a wheel that is not broken? And this guy that came from my hometown said that our country was born dead because everything was going to be division. And that's exactly, and he was absolutely right. Everything was going to be shredded into pieces. That's why 51% of Mexico now is part of the United States. The only president in Mexico that happened to finish one proper term was the first one, Guadalupe Victoria, from 1824 to 1828. After that, it was a military coup after the other, after the other. This is the map of Mexico as it looked in those days. You can see that most of what is now the United States of America were territories. They were very scarcely populated. By 1825, Chihuahua had been closed since 1822, so we didn't have that mint anymore. The Republic struck coins of a Phrygian cap in Mexico City. You can see the MO for Mexico. And sometimes you can find little interesting die varieties. Of course, none of these are cataloged yet. Nobody is daring enough to do them. And you can see that the 5 was going to be properly aligned, and probably whenever he's going to sink that punch into the die, he sneezed or something and it went too low. I don't know. Yes, this is silver, but the patina is too thick, but it's silver. So you have Durango, Guanajuato, Mexico. Guanajuato in 1825 was still making some of the profile eagle in the beginning of 1823 and 24. We will discuss why, and the old design of the Phrygian cap and the legend. Guadalajara, also in 1825, was open, and the last one was Zacatecas. Copper coins, they became the thorn of Mexico because copper coins were very fluctuant in value. Nobody liked them, everybody needed them, everybody hated them, and everybody discounted them or not. This is a fourth of real of 1836, and you're going to see a contemporary forgery of 1836. You can see how cartoonish it looks like. For us, it doesn't matter. It's valued pretty much the same. But in those days, this was a fraud because if you had 4 of these, you can exchange them for a little silver coin, and that was fraud because it was copper coin made outside of Mexico City. This is the reverse. And you can see that even the eagle has flaws. Look at that beak. Anyhow, we're going to go into all of these details in class. The Mexican coin circulated into the United States of America by trade in many ways and sources. And this is a stamp. If you collect these kind of things, this is a very rare one because it comes in an 8 reales, and it's of a doctor out of up there in New York City. His last name was Luz, and they know of this counter stamp in 2 reales, but this is the only one known of in 8 reales. Mexican silver circulated all over the world. In this case, I'm going to show you a very difficult counter stamp, which is from the Azores Islands, right there by Africa, and it belongs to Portugal. And this is the counter stamp. Please, if you're going to buy a counter stamp that you're not familiarized with, make sure that you buy it from somebody that you know. These PM crowned counter stamps are very, very forged. We will talk also about is there another question?
Yes, sorry.
Yes, ma'am.
Mexican coins were accepted in the U.S. until 1859. Was U.S. accepted in Mexico?
Excellent question. And I'm going to tune a little bit that perception. Coins of Mexico were valid into the United States up until 1857, not 1859. And I'm going to go a little farther than that. Just because a little piece of paper said something doesn't mean that practically they just stopped overnight. Mexican coins circulated into the United States well over the 1870s. When do you think the Mexican coins were displaced by the American currency? After 1878 with the Morgan dollars that finally came into real big production, and they were very accepted by everybody because of their fineness and the beauty. And by then you could produce enough to satisfy the demand. And then the latter part of the question was what, Brianna? I'm sorry.
Yeah, so it said, I'm sorry, let me find it. It said, I thought, no, I'm sorry, I have to find the question. I apologize.
That's fine. Whenever you get to that, please let me know.
Here it is,
Because
I'm sorry.
I answered the first part, but not the latter part.
Yeah, it says Mexican coins were accepted in the U.S. until 1859. Was U.S. accepted in Mexico?
Yes, and let me tell you when. In the Mexican Revolution. For our own shame, in the Mexican Revolution, American currency was accepted not as legal tender, but just accepted, period. I mean, it was tolerated, just like the Mexican coins in the US. We're going to also talk in class about contemporary forgeries, and these are sought after for some people because they're interesting. The more silver they bear, the more expensive the coin is. We always say, if coins could talk, what if I tell you that one of my coins talked to me? And you would say, what? Yes, because once I purchased a lot that had a coin, Mexican coin, and it had a letter with it. And that letter talked to me about this coin. This is the envelope of this letter, and it has to do with San Francisco, with the 49ers. This is the little Mexican coin. You can see that the A at the end is like a 4, an inverted 4. It comes from Guanajuato. It's a tiny thing. It's just 16 millimeters wide, and it is very common. This coin alone would be worth probably $8, $10, 12 in a good day. But the letter, the letter that comes with it, it's amazing. And it's in English. So here you go. This little coin was the last batch of Mexican coins that approached San Francisco when it was ours, and it was the last remnant, and then it went to be into American hands in 1849.
Do you want a question?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. It says there are indeed many U.S. merchant counterstamps on Mexican coins. Did Mexican merchants also counterstamp coins?
No, they didn't. What they did was to make the tokens. They made merchant tokens in their own place. We're going to talk about those. That's a very good question also. I think I'm going to show a couple of them. So this is the 4th of Real that was the last breath of Mexican ownership and the first American ownership that people has in this country of those lands. This is a municipal coin. These are the kind of coins that they would do for merchant tokens as well. So they're oddly struck, they're very crude, and some, yeah, they have a couple of catalogs off of them. But in this case, it's a municipal coin. A little town issued a copper coin because they didn't have any. We're going to talk about them in class, as well as the official copper coins, such as these ones from Zacatecas. These are the kind of counterstamps that you were talking about. They counterstamp some of the current coins when they were very gone and people couldn't make some sense of their design anymore. So they put a stamp on saying what they were worth or where they were going to be valid after a certain time or for how much. These are more counter stamps in copper coins. They were regular coins, not from merchants. In my opinion, these probably were made by haciendas, and they were used as hacienda tokens. You can see them in different series, just as the top one in Chihuahua and the bottom ones, well, the bottom one in Zacatecas. So sometimes you can see, where are these coming from? We don't know. The majority of this information is gone. Some of it you can see. By 1862, we had several mints. And it's incredible that being in the middle of a French invasion, we were using the talents to make these kind of coins. The decimal system was coming into place. This is a very rare trial of 1 centavo. We're going to also talk about discrepancies in design out of errors in the dies whenever we have the chance to view these coins in class. Medals like this one appeared in Maximilian times. You can see at this point that Maximilian has also problems with finances. We're going to discuss the finances of the empire, and we're going to see the loans that he had to make, international loans like this one, and we're going to discuss the details, how they were used. And if you see here, first loan, yes, it was more than one, and how these things were perceived internationally. And it's not just coins, but also paper money and stocks and bonds, whenever we come to that. San Luis Potosí made coins also on behalf of Maximilian. I'm going to use this mint because it's the easiest and the quickest thing to go to. And this is the peso that it was made by Maximilian, the first time that the word peso appeared in a Mexican silver coin. It's a beautiful design. These are the miners. You can see that they're from San Luis Potosí for the letter P that goes underneath the date. And yes, the name of Potosí came from the wish of the wishful thinking of San Luis town to have as many riches as Potosí in Bolivia. Of course, it didn't happen. But hey, we had another mint. People like Victor Hugo wanted to help us, at least with his support, in defeat the French and Maximilian, and eventually we did. Republican coins of 8 Realis of 1866, regardless of the mint, are exceedingly rare. Any coin in any condition from 1866 is going to fetch at least $1,000. We will discuss in class why they're so rare. By 1867, Maximilian tried to abdicate. This is the last coin that he produced in Mexico City. And you have a little doubling in the ribbon under his face. And he didn't abdicate because he received a letter from his beautiful mother saying in a very maternal way, "I'd rather see you dead in the rubble of Mexico City than coming here to Europe defeated. A Habsburg never surrenders. If you decide to go into the cowardice to surrender, there will be no place in Europe for as long as I'm your mother." With those beautiful words, of course, he didn't have any place to go, so he was eventually captured because he realized in Querétaro that he didn't have any more hope. This is the last known image of Maximilian. He was plagued with dysentery. He was condemned to die anyway. You can see that he has to support himself with a cane. Look at the difference in face from the first image coming into Mexico in 1864 and the last one in 1867. There is the execution part. There is a legend that is real. When he was going to be executed, he had the place of honor in the center of it. But if you see this painting, you would see that it's not him, but Miramon. The center should have been Maximilian, and it was. But Maximilian turned into his friend and he said, "You need to be in the center because you're a very courageous imperialist and a very loyal subject." And he said, Miramon said, "No, sire, That's your spot and I'm not going to take it. And Maximilian said to him, as your emperor, I command you to be in the center. As your friend, I beg of you to please accept my request. So that's what happened. These are the soldiers that executed Maximilian, but here it comes. Before he was going to be executed, he passed 1 ounce of gold bearing his effigy, as the witness say, wrote in their books, to request the last wish, which was for him not to be shot above the shoulders, because he didn't want for his mother to be astonished to see his body defaced. These are the 20 gold pesos coins. This is a very interesting coin because it is the first decimal gold coin in the history of Mexico. And it is the only imperial coin made by this empire. And we're going to talk about the differences of these 8,624 coins. And in this case is the second variety, which has a die break under the number 2, and the lower loop of the S of pesos being harshly polished. Whenever you get one of these, you're going to be told by the merchant that sells you this coin, this coin came from Maximilian's execution. You know what? It may be true. We don't know. We don't have a clue of what happened to those coins.
So Ricardo, you have 3 questions.
Okay, let me have one.
Are left. You want to do one now?
Yes, please.
Okay. Was Mexican paper universally exchangeable for Mexican silver coinage?
Excellent question. Wait a little, and we're going to talk about that whenever we talk about paper money. Yes, next question.
Okay. Were the jolas struck in 1817 through 1818 what is now in Texas, Mexico, or in modern times?
No. They were original. They were struck by Miguel Barrera and by Martinez. What was his last name? His first name, I don't remember. But yes, they were Antonio Martinez, I think it was his name. They were originally from the times of independence, and I'm astonished that they made it to the American catalogs, because not a single chromosome of Anglo-Saxon descent had to do with these coins. They were made in Mexico. They were made like a ton of other places in Mexico made this kind of municipal coinage. And if Texas would have still remained as part of Mexico, you would have bought those things for $200 at the most. So there you have it. Yes. So in short, yes, they're original. How many mints did we have? Okay, I'm going to show you all the mints of Mexico and where they were located and the years on which they opened. What I like the best is that whenever you see a list of Mexican mints, you will see that Zacatecas is the last one, and is actually one of the first ones that opened. And the last one that opened was Alamos in Sonora, and is the first one that you will see in that list. So out of these 14 mints, all of them were in circulation. Coins from these mints were in circulation. However, not all of these 14 worked at the same time. There were at the most, I think, 8 or 9 simultaneously. Out of these 14 mints in 1861, you had 2 that were closed, so that goes down to 12. And out of the 12 mints, just 4 were in Mexican hands. That will tell you how difficult this situation was for us Mexicans, and why these Mexican coins circulated all over the world, because the foreigners harvest these coins and place them into circulation in Europe or to pay something in the Far East and everything. So it was not for free that all these Mexican coins happened. Now we come for paper money, and now I'm going to answer your question. During the times of Emperor Maximilian opened the first bank in Mexico. At the end, it was over than 30. And this was the Bank of London, Mexico, and South America. These are the kinds of paper money that you will see. All of them were payable in silver. This bank particularly made sure that we're at pair, which meant every peso in paper equal to an ounce of silver, or a peso in silver. However, other banks later on, devalued their currencies. For each peso in paper, they would pay you 100 cents in copper or 92 cents in silver. They were discounted at 8%. And that was the profit that the bank would do for exchanging paper, even though it was their own, for silver. However, these notes that you're seeing are the only ones that we know more or less how many of them were made, because they were printed in the at the American Banknote Company in New York. However, not all of these issues were made in New York. This is my latest acquisition. It came 2 days ago in the mail, and this is an exceedingly rare note from the Banco de Londres, Mexico y Sudamérica, or Bank of London, Mexico and South America, and it's dated of 1882. This was a note that was going to be placed in circulation. However, they forgot to use the specimen, so they got the last one of the pile, which was the number 7,300, and they just canceled this paper money. It's very difficult to find this in any other currency of any bank. In the newspapers, they said that they made the new paper money of the Bank of London, Mexico, and South America, and the first denomination that appeared was of 20 pesos. We're going to talk about the sequence of placing these notes in circulation and the exchange of them. And the rest of the banks, of course, most important of them. The Bank of London of Mexico was the big one, was one of the two big ones. And all of these, some of these notes bear some branch stamping. And you would say, why would they do that? No, it was not for commercial advertisement. No, it was not to make sure that they knew that city or town belonged to them. It was for accounting purposes. Some of these notes came straight from the Mexico City, and they made sure that these notes were going to be used to open a branch in a different place or for a specific purpose. And they marked these notes, so whenever they were going to be redeemed, they knew from which account and from which book to take them out. Okay, by 1900, you would see that 36% came from Banco Nacional de Mexico, or National Bank of Mexico, 29% was of Bank of London and Mexico, and 35% was of other states. So we're going to talk about these kind of percentages and other things whenever we come to class. Stocks, of course we're going to talk about stocks whenever we talk about paper money, especially of the railroad. You will see that the railroad was, let me just move this thing. There you go. This is the inauguration of this particular railroad, the German railroad of Tehuantepec, which was perceived by many Americans as the Panama before Panama Canal. And we're going to talk about other railroad companies as well. Whenever you see Mexican, it doesn't necessarily mean that Mexico's capital was invested in there, other than 1 or maybe 2% of the whole thing. All of these companies belong to the Americans. And then it came the revolution. This revolution happened in 1910. This little guy called Madero started to debunk the tyrant emperor of Mexico, and he did exactly what the Americans did in their electoral careers. He did an electoral forerun. So he went to every single town that he could. He went and exposed his platform, his political platform. Everybody loved him. Everybody liked him, to the point that Diaz hated him. And of course, as you may think, he was not going to allow to be president very easily. We're going to be talking about each and every one of these banks and their motives, and whenever we come to class. And then in 1910, we made the most beautiful peso we could probably have made in the 20th century. It's called the Caballito, or Little Horse peso. It was designed in France. You could see the sun rise for the new century. This commemorates the first century of our independence. And these coins were made in 1910, 11, 12, 13, and 14. They should have been made just until the year of 1913, but then it's a very unusual, striking of 1914. We will discuss all of that in class because we don't have time here. We're just flying through the history of Mexico. We're going to talk about the difference of strikes and the difference in issues. Madero came from one of the richest parts of Mexico. His family owned not one but two banks as the majority investors, and he was revered in Mexico. Oh, sorry. People would follow him wherever he was going, and once he became president, everybody was looking for him to do all the promises that he said in his electoral route that he was going to do or accomplish. Of course, he didn't have any experience in administration, much less in politics, so he didn't last very long. We're going to be talking about coins of the Revolución or revolution. This is one of my most prized items. It is a trial of the die sinker or engraver in lead, and it is so good that it's even had a reeded edge. Several people told me that this could be a forgery, but once I saw the 50 centavos coins of this series, I realized that this is a real coin, a real item, because it matches the reeded edge of the 50 centavos coins, which is very rare. I was going to purchase it, but not for $6,000. That person didn't know how much this coin was worth. And then we're going to also talk about differences that make or break a deal. These coins look the same, but they're not. One of them is worth probably 13 or 14 bucks. The other one is $150. How much is the difference for this difference in prices? The design on the side of the date. And because, as you can see, this die broke very early and they didn't like this design anyways. So that's why the one that has the little dumbbells or something like that on the side are more expensive. We're going to talk not, of course, about all the 48 varieties in class, but I'm going to give you a guide on which you can find your own in the story of these 48 varieties. And then we're going to be able to talk about the most famous coin of the Mexican Revolution, the death to Huerta peso or Muera Huerta peso. They killed two generals from Villa, killed the usurper, Victoriano Huerta. He had killed Madero and the vice president in order for him to get into power. And they killed him in a coin. And this is the coin that they made in a very small town in Durango. This is the Muera Huerta peso. This is the ugliest head you can ever see of an eagle. Look at the serpent. Oh my God, that snake doesn't even have a head. This is the 6-star Muera Huerta peso. You will be able to handle one. I have one in my collection, and it is very rare because it's very ugly. Remember what I told you, the uglier the coin, the most expensive the coin goes. They made a new design, a new style, which is probably the one that you may find that you will be able to afford. It's over $1,000, of course, and the better the coin is, the more expensive it gets. But I want to point out something that I just found out. If you want to purchase one, make sure that you use your loop. Nobody knows about this yet. In the cap, in some very rare instances, you can read Libertad in the cap. I saw that one, and even though I have a couple of those things, I said, I'm going to get another one. I'm going to look like one of those merchants that can display you 12 of these coins in order for you to buy one of those. But I got it because it was interesting. I've never seen anything like that. Another friend of mine found another one, and another friend of mine found one in his collection. So they're very rare, even if they come in good condition. And then you will see that this die broke very easily, the one that has a continuous border. And you can see that it's a different thing because on the other coin, on the other design, you would see a dot and a dash, dot and a dash, dot and a dash. outside of the eagle, outside of the legend. And this coin usually comes to the individual taste. Is it more expensive with the die cracks or without the die cracks? It doesn't matter. If you like the one with the die cracks, just as I do, get one with those. If you don't, try to get one as plain as you can. You have enough coins around to purchase whatever you want. Edith O'Shaughnessy was the wife of the American ambassador in Mexico City, or the one in charge of the Mexican affairs, as it was called in those days, because of some situation. And she wrote about this Mexican peso. This is the only account that I have found anywhere in the history of Mexico that talks about these Mexican pesos. Now, how these Mexican pesos that were coined in a very small town made it to Mexico City, and for her to see these coins and write about that in her diary. The diary is called The Wife of a Diplomat in Mexico, or a Diplomat's Wife in Mexico. It was printed in 1914, and it's not expensive. With 20 bucks, you can buy one of those copies. I will tell you all the story about that whenever we come to class. This is the reverse of yet another coin. And it says that it was called the peso of the two deaths, death to Huerta and death whomever had it, and that's another lie. Nobody was killed because they had these coins. I'm sure that Huerta didn't approve of them, but nobody was not even incarcerated or detained for this. Everybody knows this guy. This is the perfect image of the Mexican charro with a big sombrero and everything. His name was Emiliano Zapata, and his cry of freedom was reform, liberty, justice, and law. We will talk about this and his plan of revolution and what he did and he didn't do. He didn't have anything to do with any coin, anything at all, except for the paper money issued in the Banco Revolucionario de Guerrero. He was in charge of in this particular institution or bank because this Revolutionary Bank of Guerrero State was going to take care of the widows, those who were impaired by, lesions of war, and those who were orphans. That's why it was very important for him. Needless to say, any paper money of this bank is very difficult to get, especially in good condition. Mexican pesos were issued also by Villa. Villa and Zapata were the only ones that paid in silver. You will see, and we will talk about the two sides of this peso made by two different engravers, Salazar on the obverse and Sevilla in the reverse. Sevilla got his die whenever the revolution ended, and then he was hungry, and he decided to make reproductions of this peso once he realized how popular they came in the American market, and he made these restrikes of a fantasy obverse in the 1920s called the Sevilla peso, but they're absolutely fantasies. We will discuss of the difference of the die stages, and even though you may have a brilliant uncirculated coin, just like this second one, you will not have a very good price as if it was brilliant uncirculated with all the detail, just as the first one. We will discuss on how some of these Mexican coins in the Revolution times came to be, because every time that you see a Mexican coin, it was a promise or the goodwill of somebody trying not to deceive the public with a little piece of cardboard or paper. They wanted to place an actual coin. And this is important because sometimes you may pass a good coin because you're mistaking it for a coin that is very common. All of the coins of the Ejército del Norte or Army of the North made in Guadalajara are much more expensive than those made in Chihuahua. Villa mimicked his own coinage in Guadalajara, and that's why they look pretty much the same. But if you don't know the difference, you're going to end up paying or letting go some dollars. And that is the Chihuahua series on the left and the Guadalajara series on the right and the bottom. If you don't know of these, you may pass this series as being the same. Also, we're going to talk about small varieties such as this one, on which you can see a die clash very clearly in one of the sides. The 1 centavo coin of this series is the the key of these coins. We're going to also see difference in style of the ones that were made in 1915 in Mexico City. As I told you, whenever you were making coins, you try not to deceive the public. Aguascalientes was one of those towns. He was, this guy was a governor from, on behalf of Villa from this time to this time, and he had a lot of these things. And as you can see, it was a lot and very varied of them, too many of them. So he decided to make coins, and he made a provision in a decree on the kind of coins that they were going to circulate, how they're going to look like, and also, as you may imagine, these kind of coins of the Estado de Aguascalientes, or Aguascalientes, the state of Aguascalientes, have a couple of good stories to tell. We're going to talk about them whenever it's the chance to see them in class. At the end of 1918, coins were being consolidated by the new coins. Still, some of these coins of silver were replaced by the ones in copper, and we're going to talk about why. In 1919, you know, copper coins came again to be, and we're going to talk about small varieties such as this one that is not cataloged, on which the middle number 1 is close to the 9 or in the middle of the space. By 1921, we have this magnificent coin, and this is the beginning of the unification of all coinage. We don't have any more coins from the Revolution or paper money. And with this one being an hour and exactly 45 minutes of talking, I'm going to let you go, and I thank you very, very much for your kind patience. I hope that I didn't bore you too much. And if there's any more coins, I'm at your service, señorita.
Great. Well, thank you for your time. Before anybody leaves us, if you don't mind filling out the survey, I'm going to launch it right now. Ricardo, you have 3 questions that have come in the last just few minutes.
Excellent. If you want to read them while they're finishing their survey, it's going to be a good idea.
So it says, do you believe that there was a Masonic conspiracy between Benito Juarez and Maximilian, allowing him to live in exile in El Salvador?
You have no idea how many times I've heard this story, and I'm going to tell you, not no, but flat out no. For one simple reason, Maximilian was not a Mason.
Great.
Yes, ma'am.
Says the sun rays on older coins rise from the bottom up. What is a semicircular round with liberty? Later, the semicircular is at the top and the rays go down. 1944, un peso, any reason?
No, there's no reason for that. They just changed it, and it was the design that they chose to have.
What is in the cap?
What is in the cap? Rays. In the word liberty.
For someone new to Mexican coins, what book do you recommend as a good starting point?
Excellent. Let me tell you what I would do if I were you. I would choose a particular period, and if you're not sure on a particular period, go and get yourself one of the old catalogs that you can buy for $2 in any place, and start browsing through that. Don't get an expensive thing or a big catalog for $10 or $12 because you don't know. I would go for the half-price books. I'm not sure if they have that in wherever you are, but they're very popular here in Texas, in Houston. And half-price books has older books that are semi-new or new, and you can go and look for an older catalog and browse through that to see which series you would like to get that are not very expensive or something like that. And you can start and build from there. You can get a typeset, and then you can go and start opening your scope as much as your budget allows or your taste allows.
Could you comment on the start and the end date and rarity of the gold one?
And which gold one?
The person that asked this question, can you elaborate on that?
It says 1 star or 6 stars?
It says of the gold one, O-N-E.
Well, maybe he's referring to the 6 stars Muera Huerta gold peso, and 20 pesos, or Death to Huerta 20 pesos. Those are modern fantasies of the 1950s.
If we didn't get that question answered, whoever put that in, if you could elaborate, that would be great.
Please.
What would be a good coin or series of coins to get started with Mexican coinage?
I'm going to tell you which ones. The equivalent of the American state quarters, which would be the 5 peso bimetallic series. They're very inexpensive. They're modern. They're bimetallic, which means that it's in 2 colors of metals. And you have different little people in there. So that would be a great idea to start with. With the $20, you can get the whole series, or $30.
Can you say anything about metals from Mexico?
Yes, I touched in some of the metals from Mexico. The first one that I showed you was of Iturbide. However, I have a couple of other metals, and I published a very good article. If anybody wants to have an article about the Mexican metal that I wrote, I can easily send it to you through an email. Please make sure that you forward your email to Brianna, and she would be kind enough to forward it to me, and I'll send it to you. And you're going to be surprised on the most unusual metal in the whole new world, because it's the only metal that depicts a lie officially. Yes, ma'am.
So 2 people have asked, all of these presentations will be online. I'm going to put the link in the chat right now. So it's going to be the future webinars are on there, as well as the recorded ones. The link I'm sending you has the link to the recorded ones. You just have to read that first paragraph. So those 2 that have asked that question, here is the link for you. Is coin collecting on the rise or decline in Mexico? And what is your impression on the younger generations becoming interested in collecting?
Excellent question. Number 1, I just had this conversation last night with somebody from Mexico that was amused. I mean, he was surprised on how the prices are rising. And I said, well, you know why they're rising? Because of you. All of the younger generations are very much interested in these coins, and prices are soaring. So to answer your question, in my opinion, coin collecting is on the rise, big time, not just in Mexico, but in the United States as well. And the best things that could have happened to coin collecting were the Mexican quarters, the American state quarters, and the Mexican 5 peso coins, because that really sparked the interest in coins, and also to get older coins. So I believe that our future as coin collectors is assured, at least by the next generation, and is going to be their due to make it better after that. Yes, ma'am.
All right. Were mint towns always large towns, or were there other reasons for establishing a mint in a town?
Excellent question. I'm going to tell you why they established a mint in that town. Because they had silver, and that's it. Because they had silver, and then doesn't necessarily have to be a big town to have a mint. They opened the mints in strategic regional places on which they needed to have some sort of silver. Remember, the Americans or the French or the English or the Spaniards that owned these mints, they cared just for the 8 Realis coins. They couldn't care less for the fractions. So the fractions that they minted stayed in Mexico, and they would help to populate the circulation of these people in those towns.
So I think the person that asked the question earlier, could you comment on the start and end of the rarity? They were talking about the gold peso.
The gold piece, what?
Gold peso?
The gold peso. Which gold peso did I show? I didn't show any gold peso with a star at the end that I recall. The only 20 peso, the only peso in gold that I showed was the 20 peso gold coin of Maximilian. I didn't show any other gold coin in the whole presentation that I can think of. So I'm not sure exactly what that means. I apologize. Okay. If you want to elaborate, I'm sorry, if you want to elaborate in your question and you want to send it to Brianna, she's going to forward it to me, and I will answer it to you to the best of my abilities.
Yes. And for those that are asking for the article, if you can also email me at seminars@money.org, then I can forward it on to you once Ricardo gets it to me. That'd be the easiest. Is there a place that you can identify official countermarks on 1600s copper maravedis? For example,
yes,
dates
yes,
or Roman numerals. How can someone identify what the marks are and why they're put there?
Yes, and yes. Let me tell you where it comes. Unfortunately, the books are in Spanish, because I don't know of any books in English. but I just purchased mine. They're not cheap, but they're very good. Let me explain to you what happened to these coins. I call them the tattooed coins. There were coins that circulated in Spain in the 17th century, and you can see how some coins were valued and devalued and revalued and all of that in a span of 50 years. So you may have one decree that said in one town, all of these coins are going to be devalued to 18 maravedíes. So an 8 maravedíes. So you'd see a Roman numeral 8. And then you see a letter G for Granada. And then on the other side, you would say a number 13 in Roman numerals. Oh my gosh, it means that it was revalued again in 1658 per se, you know, in the town of Madrid. So you will have another stamp. These are very interesting series. And the book is, if you please send Brianna your question with your email address, I'll send you a picture of the book so you will know what you're looking for. That would be the easiest thing.
Did Spanish coins such as the 2 reals of Madrid, Seville, and Segovia circulate in Mexico in the 1730s and 1800s?
No, and I'm going to tell you why. Very few coins of Spain circulated in Mexico or any of the other Spanish continental possessions because they were of the base silver. They didn't have the same silver. So an 8 reales of Madrid that came into Mexico would be worth 7.5 or 7 reales. That wouldn't be an easy thing to do. The idea was to take the silver out by commerce, not to take their silver in.
What was in the cap of the peso you were talking about? You said it was something you hadn't noticed before. This was the coin you were talking about just before the ambassador's wife.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. Is the death to Huerta coin or Muera Huerta coin. In the cap, it has the word libertad, liberty. And that is very unusual to see in this series because they're so flat struck that you will never see anything on that side. I didn't even know that it had the word libertad until 6 or 7 years ago when I found the specimen that I showed you. I was shocked to see that because I thought that the cap didn't have any design at all. Yes, ma'am.
Did Mexico strike coins for other countries? What coins did the U.S. strike for Mexico?
Excellent and excellent. In 1906 and 1907, the Americans struck coins for Mexico because we were very animated trying to close all these mints. And by then, we need to have a lot of coins. And we had to ask permission to the United States to coin our coins in all the 4 mints. So you minted coins of 5 and 10 gold pesos, 1 centavo of 1906, and 2 centavos of 1906 as well. And also they were minted in Birmingham, in the UK. And they made coins of 5 centavos in nickel of 1906 and 1907. And yes, we have also struck coins for other countries. We struck coins for Ecuador in the 1940s. We struck coins for El Salvador in 1920s, and on and on.
I have a book on Mexican varieties after 1905. Is there a good website or book on Mexican variety coins pre-1905?
Oh, yes, it depends on the denomination. There's a book called Resplandores, and it's made by Mike Dunnigan. That one you got. Mike Dunnigan is a very well-known author. If you look for him, he's going to give you all the varieties for the 8 reales. The book is about $100, but believe me, I can assure you it's going to be the best $100 you spend on a book regarding to the 8 reales. For the fractional, there's another book called by Brad Yonaka. Made by Brad Yonaka, and it's called Fractionals on Pillars or something like that. And it's not that expensive. You can get it online, both of those books. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so somebody else asked about a book. It says, what's the name of the book? But it was before this question you just answered. I don't know which book they were referring to. So if the person that asked, what's the name of the book, if you can elaborate on when he was talking about it, that'll help us answer that one. Do you know how many numismatic societies exist in Mexico?
Today, we have about 20 or so that I can think of.
Great. Somebody just put in a comment, so this is the 6th ANA webinar I've attended in the past couple weeks, and this was by far the most interesting and informative. So I just want to put that out there for you.
Gracias.
All right. Is there any truth to the story that the U.S. Mint struck 8 Realis pieces for trade in the Far East?
No, they didn't. They couldn't have. That's why they invented their trade dollar.
All right, those are all the questions. We're just waiting for the person. Here we go. The book that I was going to send a picture and it was written in Spanish.
Yes. Make sure that you send your email to Brianna, and I will send a picture and I'll forward it to you. I have the book here with me.
You know what it's called?
No, I don't have. It has a big long name. It's called las marcas y contramarcas de los maravedíes en los reyes de los Austrias, or something like that.
Okay. Perfect. So again, if you're looking for the article, if you can shoot me an email, that'll help me. Ricardo will send it to me and I'll forward it on to you. And if you're looking for the book that he's just talking about, again, send me an email. That'll be the easiest way. Please send it to seminars@money.org and put in either subject line or the email that you're looking for the questions for Ricardo's class. It'll help not get mixed up with the other ones. Let's see here. They want to know where they can download a copy of your Brain and Knowledge.
Come to summer seminar.
Yes.
Come to summer seminar. Whatever you saw here in 2 hours is exactly what you're going to see. All these gizmos moving around and all the coins. I'm telling you, I'm a teacher, so I'm structured. So
Yep.
Don't think that you're going to be sitting down and minding your own business, because I'm going to call you up and you're going to come into the front and finish my sentence.
Yes. Great. Well, again, if you're looking for the articles or the pictures of the book, please email me. That'll be the easiest way. I see some people saying send it to me, but if you can just shoot me an email, seminars@money.org, that'll be the easiest way. Ricardo, thank you so much for your time today. We really, really appreciate it. We have a certificate of appreciation coming to you in the mail soon. For those that are still on here, our next presentation is going to be with Bill Vitale. It's tomorrow at 11 a.m. Mountain Time, and it's going to be creating a great club newsletter. So there's still room in that class if you want to participate. It is that time, so I think we will cut it off here. Let me make sure one more question didn't come through. I think we are good, Ricardo, so thanks so much for your time. Thanks everybody that stayed on with us. And send me emails if you need to, seminars@money.org, and I'll get those to Ricardo. Have a wonderful day, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you very much. You have a nice one.
Thanks.
Hasta luego,
Bye.
amigos.